Hey everyone, it's Focred here. I hope you're all doing well. Today's video is on the importance of true zero minimum dead zones. So first I'd like to show you guys what a true zero dead zone should look like if you are going to test your sticks. So basically we know that the sticks have a absolute center point where there should be no register. But the sensors are so sensitive, and especially the springs used, once they have a little bit of play, which I would say even few hours of game time, once they have their play, it's very difficult to come back to their center point. And having a true zero dead zone will actually show the little play. So if you do any slight movement of the sticks, and it's very noticeable, especially if you use a high rise control fix or anything, like if you have a high stick that came with your controller, if you slightly move that, you will see that it will register an input. Now, this doesn't happen if the controller has built-in dead zones. To show you an example of the built-in dead zone, I'm going to change the controller. Now I have the ROG Raikiri connected, and it has really good calibrated sticks, but unfortunately they are using built-in dead zones. So you can see I have a perfect center value. I will move the stick around, it'll come back to the perfect center value. It's not because the stick has no play or the spring is bringing it exactly to the center. No, it's because they are using, which I think around 4 to 5% minimum dead zones. How I know that? If I'm going to move this stick slightly, that slop that it has, it takes a lot to come out of that dead zone that it has. And you will say, oh, it's so minor, it doesn't affect. But look at the movement, and especially the way springs wear out. Sometimes you have very easy breakage on one side of the stick and then a little bit more difficult on the other side. Now, because they've used a built-in dead zone, it's because the stick has gone unevenly. My right side takes a little bit more movement to break than the left one. And if you look at my thumb, the whole movement that's used to break that dead zone is actually a lot. Now, this might not affect if you are not using a high-rise stick, because even a slight movement of my thumb will basically break out of it. So built-in dead zones will definitely affect if you're not using high-rise sticks, but it will definitely going to impact a lot more if you are using high-rise control freaks or any of the high-rise stick that came with your controller. Now, you would say that why does this negatively affect you? Because you can actually disable the dead zones in your game. And that's a valid point, and that's exactly what I used to think. But then, if you follow my channel, I've made a community post where I encountered a bug in MW3 where the game was forcing a minimum dead zone on me. So that minimum dead zone meant not only the 10% dead zone I have from the game, now I have the 5% dead zone on the controller if I was using the Raikiri or any of the controller that has a built-in dead zone. That meant the dead zone went to 15%. And then it takes at least 1% for the game to register. So you have a 16% dead zone, which if the game is not bugging out, then okay, you have a 5%. And I personally don't play with zero dead zone. So I do play with 2, 3, depending on the amount of drift. If it's the Hall effect controllers like the G7 SE, I can play on 2 and 3 because that really is where I have very slight drift. But with potentiometer sticks, yeah, I'm playing around 4 or even 5, depending on the response of the controller. But having the forced dead zone by the game, which is a bug, by the way, really spoils the experience. Now, the last couple of times the bug happened to me, I actually recorded it while it happened. So it's just a video from my phone, but I'd like you guys to see what actually happened. So I'm going to put those videos here now. So it's happened again. I have those fixed dead zones of 10% on my controller. So you see it's coming back to 0, and my minimum dead zones are set to 0. I can go and even make it a minimum, like a standard minimum thing, and come out of it, and it still does it. So if I press left stick and reduce it from, so this is 10 dead zone, and you see it's coming back to 0. So that's the 10 dead zone there. And if I go back down, and we'll reduce that to 0, and we do it here, it's still coming back to 0. Just to prove that we don't have any minimum dead zones applied, I will go to the GameStar Nexus, and there I should have 4% at the bottom and 1 and 2% drift on either side, even like 3% and stuff. And this is the profile that's active. I'll go back in game, and it will still, left is fine, left will still show everything, it only happens to the right stick. So if you go there, see it's coming back to 0. And just for the proof, we will actually go to gamepad tester or one of the edge, just to make sure that it's not just the game set application that's showing it's not the controller, it's actually so this is the HCI design application, the web page, and if I go into the game controller, so you can see the numbers. So if I move the stick even tiny bit, so I'm moving the stick here and it moves, and I actually have a lot of drift at the bottom side. So that's how I basically calibrated my sticks, right? I will go back into the game. The game will have these dead zones set to 10, even though I have them set at 0. And it's not just in a menu thing. I actually feel this whilst gaming. This is why I always test it, because this should be drifting. I'm not going to stop this recording, and I'm going to carry on going. I will restart the game and this problem will be gone. This is the 5th time it's happening to me. First couple of times I missed it, then I caught it and I made a post on it, then I caught it again, I made a post on it. So this is the 5th time, and this is my 2nd time actually recording it. When the game comes back on, I haven't done anything, it's the same profile on the controller, and you will see that I will have true 0 dead zones. So I will let it log in, not touching, not doing anything. Okay. All right, and you go to multiplayer, and you are going to see, so of course I have the crossplay off. This apparently only is happening when I have the crossplay off as well, which is strange. All right, okay, so I will go back to the dead zones and I'm going to test them. See, it's showing my 0 settings and stuff. Yeah. Just watch, I'm going to push this out where it comes. Yeah. The numbers are coming to where they should be. This is what I mean. Now I have true 0 dead zones. So I can use my settings, which is usually 2. So I use 2 dead zones on the G7 and some of my other controllers. This is the problem, and I don't know why this is happening, but for whatever reason, the game decides to just make my only right stick, left stick seems to be fine, my right stick dead zones to 10 until I test it and I feel like my aim is off. I test it, and just to show you guys that what this looks like in the firing range as well, you will see that I will have, because I have 0 right now, so there will be some drift. There you go. So it's drifting. That's how I keep the drift at the bottom. That's how I've calibrated it. But this is what I mean. For whatever reason, the game forces the minimum 10 dead zone onto my controller. Now imagine if you're playing with a controller that has built-in dead zones, that will be doubled up. Whatever this bug is, it happens every now and then, and it's really annoying. So I'm in the game right now, playing on the Wolverine V2, and the dead zone thing has happened again. So basically I should be having drift on the top, and this is that dead zone problem again. So I have my dead zone set to 0, and if I go to register, see, it will come back to normal. Left stick seems to be fine, so it's showing its drift numbers. Left stick is okay, it only happens to the right stick. It keeps coming back to 0 because it has 10 dead zones, which I don't have enabled. So it's not just on the G7S, it has happening on other controllers as well. So this is on the Razer Wolverine, and the only way to fix it is to restart the game. And finally I caught it in the game, because in the past I've only realized it once I was outside the game and stuff, but yeah, it's happening during the game. So if I come out of the game, I will keep everything running, and it only happens, apparently, I think it's only happening because of this crossplay being off. So if I go into the Razer app, this is a really annoying bug, to be honest. Like, this is absolutely insane. So inside the Razer app, I just have to start this again, and so just to make sure that it's not a controller that's bugging out, I'll just quickly go into the Microsoft Edge, and we'll see this is the HCI design. I think it should be like the page that's already been loaded, and so it's the same controller connected. I press the button, you see my drift numbers, like 2 something going up. So it should be drifting way upwards. That's how it's supposed to be. So yeah, there are the drift numbers. So it's supposed to be going up basically. Okay, and in the Razer app, you'll see that my drift numbers should be to the lowest ones that you can keep, which is 1. So I keep that at 1 and it will show the drift there as well. Now, if I go back into Call of Duty, I'll go to that controller and go to the dead zones. My dead zones are 0. So the moment I start this should be showing me 3% top register. If I push out, it should be coming back 3%. It's not going to do that. I'm going to go and make sure that I make this to the standard at 10%. I will test the dead zones. And if I do that, see that's 10%. I will come back, make that to 0. And I'll make the left to 0 as well, just to test. And if I start it, left one is fine, it's showing the right numbers that it's supposed to be showing. For whatever reason, the game just applies 10% dead zones on the right. Okay, I haven't tried this before, but I'm gonna stay in the game. I'll just disconnect, reconnect the controller just to make sure that that can fix this. Nope, I still have those 10% dead zones. The only way I can get out of this to show the right things, basically right dead zone taking effect, is if I restart my game, which is insane that this happens. But this is the second time this time I caught it in the game. So I was actually in a match and it was happening. In the past, I've realized it like, towards the end of the game or something, and something was feeling off. But this time, because I started playing with the Wolverine for its review today and had a few hours on it, and yeah, this is insane that this bug is so annoying. And I think it's happening because of whatever the system is that tells you that your crossplay is off or whatever. I think that's resetting the settings, and dead zones are one of the things that's basically bugged. I'm going to go back into the game, same control is connected, and you will see that it will show the right register. So we are here, we get the message and everything, crossplay is off, whatever. And going into the settings, and I will go back to check the dead zones. The moment I test them, and you will see that is now showing the right register. This is the issue. When the bug happens, it applies that 10 dead zone, even though you have it at 0, it will apply. The moment I tested, I should be having 4 in vertical, and it was showing 0. So that's basically my second proof now. Now that you guys have seen what happens with that bug, the only way I was able to catch that is because I was using controllers that had 0 dead zone, and I was able to see the drift. The first time it happened was the Elite Series 2, when I first made the community post, and I thought that it had gone, but then it happened twice on the G7 SE. When the second time it happened, I actually made a video, and then it's happened on the Razer Wolverine V2 Chroma, which actually has built-in dead zones, but I have a little bit of drift. I'll explain that in a minute. But imagine if you are playing with a controller that has built-in dead zone, and any bug in your game happens or whatever is going on, there is no way of you to find out what's happening, why your aim feels off. And trust me, having larger dead zones will affect your aiming. Not just the aiming, because I know, we do instinctively, the muscle memory, we sort of know how much of the movement of the stick does how much register, and it really affects. If you go try it yourself, just increase the dead zones by 2-3%, and you will see it will throw your aim off. Not just me, this will happen to each and every one of you, because if you're a regular gamer, you will get used to a certain aim feel. And this is where it gets annoying, because we should be able to choose our own numbers. Now, it's not just for aiming, if you're sniping or whatever, even recoil control. If you are using a gun that has a recoil pattern, you fight the recoil in the opposite way. If you have wrong dead zones that you haven't selected, even that will throw you off. And you will experience that. Like that's honestly in MW3 and even in Battlefield, you will definitely experience that. So why are manufacturers implementing this? Because unfortunately, at the moment, the spring loose, the play in the spring is also being treated as stick drift. Now, the game-breaking stick drift in the past have always been because of the potentiometer failing, the wiper or the carbon track. When that happens, even your inputs are affected because the controller doesn't take your input exactly how it's supposed to when everything is working correctly. The play in the spring is going to be there. If you've seen my K-Silver's video, the springs are so small, they are going to develop play anyways. So instead of basically educating people that, oh yeah, that spring play will have a little bit of a drift, I'm seeing a trend where we're just getting a forced dead zone. And the worst thing is, with the forced dead zone, it's like sometimes it's not even center, especially the way the springs lose tension unevenly. So you will find that, like I showed in the in my Raikiri, there is a more on the right side than on the left, and that happens on most controllers. Now, the good way of fixing that would be to give us the capability of adjusting the center point. Give us the choice of 0 dead zone and a manual calibration option where we can adjust the center point. I'm going to show you an example of what that means right now. So here I have the Razer Wolverine V2 Chroma connected, and this is the Razer's app. And at the moment, the dead zones are set to default. So if you get the controller out of the box, this is how they are. And they've just given 1 to 4 numbers, and this is the default. Sticks have no drift, nothing whatsoever. Amazing, right? Now, if I try to reduce this to the minimum, okay, so I've gone to 1, and you can see that I have register on both of the sticks. And unfortunately, the way the sticks have lost tension on the spring, it's upwards, which is the worst thing. So I'll leave it here, and then I'm going to show you guys what happens in the gamepad tester. So I have 5% drift. All the way up on the left stick is 7%. Now it's upwards. I can push it down, so the center point of the stick is going to be around like, bottom here somewhere. But because I can't adjust that center point, I have the drift always going up. If they had given me the capability of adjusting the center point slightly upwards, I could bring this. So sometimes I get 6% outside or something like that. Now, unfortunately, in the game, I would have to use a 7% dead zone to get rid of it. But it will get rid of the drift upwards, but it's going to introduce a 7% dead zone to the bottom, which I don't need because all the drift is upwards. So the 7% is like it's a circle in the middle. But if Razer had given me the capability of bringing this center point down, so the spring does have a little bit of play, but if I could bring the center point upwards actually, because the drift is up, I could be using 3 to 4% dead zone to get rid of that drift in the game, which will definitely increase my performance, and it will definitely increase the feeling of the controller, because left and right don't need that much because all the drift is upwards. This is what I mean. Instead of doing this kind of implementation of a forced dead zone to get rid of the drift, even that one setting has some dead zone, which I think is around, I would say 3%. And then I think the 4 is definitely 8-9% what Razer is using on the Wolverine. But this is where what I suggest that the manufacturers, instead of forcing a dead zone, yeah, they can leave a standard mode where there is a dead zone and people, if they want to see perfect result in gamepad tester that's coming back exact to the center, yeah, they're happy with the standard mode. But give us an advanced mode where there are no minimum dead zones. The moment they do that, we will see the drift, and that's okay. That's fine. Let us choose our own preferred dead zone numbers in the game settings, or give us an incremental adjustment in their software so we can decide, oh, we want 2%, 3%, like Thrustmaster does, and like GameSir have done. So I personally think I don't want to use the on-controller dead zone anyway. I always prefer using the in-game one, because if anything bugs out, I can actually check by seeing if there is any drift or whatever, make sure that the right dead zones are applied. But here's the thing for me personally, now that I've experienced that bug that I showed you guys, I am not going to make a controller my daily driver if it has even 3% built-in dead zones. In the past, I didn't think it was that big of a deal because you can always adjust the dead zones in the game. But now that I've experienced that bug, I just personally cannot think that a controller that has any built-in dead zones is a true pro controller for myself. I know for you guys will be different things. You might never experience that bug, or your game has no issues. Then yeah, it's fine. Honestly, but I think instead of having the forced dead zone, I think we should be given the option to adjust the center point, and we should be given the option for a true zero dead zone instead of being treated like, just putting a forced dead zone where we just have to accept whatever that is. Because some of you might even be playing at zero dead zones. I can't play at zero dead zones. I will need 2-3% dead zones. But imagine the 3%, let's say, is your preferred dead zone setting, that on the standard controller use 3%. You get a controller that has a 5% built-in dead zone. Yes, you can adjust to it, but you will have to change. You'll have to actually adjust to that. And when you go back to the standard controller, another controller, you have to adjust it again. And it truly makes a difference. I'm telling you, adjusting even 2-3% of the dead zone that you are used to, like increasing that, it makes a big difference. So that's just my take. Personally, I don't think I want to use a controller on a daily basis if it has any built-in dead zones. At this point, I'd like to ask you guys what you think. Do you agree? Do you think it's not that big of a deal? And also, I'm interested to find out if you've experienced that bug in Call of Duty or any other game that you play where you have forced dead zones. Also, I'd like to thank to everyone who subscribed, guys. Your support means a lot. And honestly, taking this a bit more seriously, because every time I ask any questions on community posts, you are always there to respond. You're always leaving some really insightful stuff in the comments. So please carry on doing that. It doesn't only help me out, it helps a lot of other people out as well. And thank you so much for watching this video. Hopefully, I'll catch you in one of my other videos. Bye for now.